Welcome everybody. Welcome to another Community Fit. Happy Friday. I'm your host, James. And here we are for an Adjusting to Change Toolkit class. I'm just checking some stuff on the screen here. Adjusting to Change Toolkit class. We have one more week left after this. So we have today's session and we're going to wrap everything up next week. But don't worry, we're just going to take some time off and we'll be back for another series starting very, very early next year. I even have to think for a moment, like, what is next year? It's 2025. So starting early 2025, we'll have a brand new session for you. But here we are. So hopefully you had a great holiday and we're going to pick up. We're going to pick up this week on our next installment for Adjusting to Change Toolkit. Last time we met, we talked about compassion and what compassion is and how to have compassion, how to show compassion, sort of the process and the benefits of compassion. And we're going to follow that up this week with gratitude. It's all about adjusting to change. It's all about moving well through the holidays and serving your nervous system and other people's nervous systems along the way. And so we're going to continue the conversation with gratitude today. But before we jump into that segment, let's revisit kind of where we've been. Let's do some nervous system regulation. Let's expand on the topic of compassion before we get into gratitude this week. And I kept gratitude like, I'm sure someone out there is thinking, well, we should have done gratitude before Thanksgiving because thankfulness. And it was strategic because I want to kind of take the concept of thankfulness and gratitude and take it away from the holiday and make it a lifestyle. And so that's why we're bringing it here before we wrap up everything next week with one of my favorite topics, but we'll hold off on that. Okay, so let's do a little show of hands for anyone if you want to send up an emoji. If this is your very first Adjusting to Change Toolkit class, just do some sort of thumb, heart, something or other. Okay, so we got a few of you. No worries. Adjusting to Change the ACT program, Adjusting to Change Toolkit, typically runs more like a course than it is a class. You are always more than welcome to drop in, to leave, to come in and out of these sessions, but they are sequenced. And so we're going to go back a few weeks. We started with mindfulness. So we'll talk about mindfulness. Then we talked about the nervous system toolkit. We went into compassion. And then today we're going to talk gratitude. So let's go with mindfulness. What do we mean with mindfulness and why? Why even bother? Well, mindfulness, as we've been talking about it, is the ability to have awareness around context and variability. Context meaning what is going on around me. What room am I in? What time of day is it? What's happening? Who am I with? Who am I not with? Like, what is happening in the world around me? And how is that related to what I'm noticing inside of me? Because this, again, is a body-based class. It's a body-based program. So what is going on inside of me? And how is what's going on inside of me, my nervous system state, how I'm thinking about things, how I'm feeling about things, whether that's emotional feeling or quite literally physical feeling, how is that interfacing with how I am with what's going on around me? Am I pleasant? Am I not pleasant? Am I able to go with the flow, or am I resistant to going with the flow? And that has a lot to do with nervous system state. So let's jump into ways to kind of adjust, to trigger, to influence what is going on inside of us as a way to be better, or at least more tolerant with what's going on outside of us. Sometimes these topics are better served not spoken about, but kind of felt and played with and practiced. So here we go. Starting off with mindfulness. Again, body-based. There's a number of different ways to practice and get better at mindfulness. But here's how we're going to do it for today. We started off a few weeks ago talking about how to notice your body, how to notice nervous system states. And the way we've chosen to talk about it in this course for these 6 weeks is really noticing, how are you breathing right now? And just noticing, am I breathing quickly? Am I not breathing at all? Am I breathing too fast or too slow? Is it coming in through my nose or in through my mouth, out through my nose, out through my mouth? What, just noticing, not trying to adjust, not trying to change, simply noticing. So take a few moments, 10 seconds, and notice your breathing. The second way we kind of created some mindfulness around all of this is noticing physical tension in the body. Does your body feel relaxed, present, supported, comfortable right now? Or does it feel the opposite or something different? And is that the full body? Is it the shoulders? Is it the belly? Is it the hips? And just noticing how your physical body is responding to your current experience. And just noticing, again, not trying to shift or change, not trying to make sense, just noticing. And then the last one might be noticing your heart. Does your heart feel like it's beating fast, beating slow? Do you have the capacity, the ability to pay attention, to be aware of your heart in the moment? And you don't have to do all three. It might be one or something else. In fact, you could switch it to what we call focusing and just notice somewhere in your body that might feel especially good. Or maybe you notice somewhere that feels the opposite of especially good. And again, you're just paying attention to it. You're just noticing because context is about to change. And that's going to show you some variability, right? Context will change from the body state when we do some of the somatic practices, our toolkit exercises. Now, I'm going to walk us through some of the toolkit exercises, but if you have a favorite, if you have one that's been working for you, by all means, continue to play with that, harness that ability, go deeper into those practices, because I trust that some of you have been. For those of you who are like, I have no idea what you're talking about, James, this is class number 1, help me. Don't worry, we got you. So what we're going to do is we've noticed the body. We're going to try a practice. And then the encouragement is for you to notice how that practice shift or changed a breath work, how you're breathing, or tension in the body, or your heart, or an area that you feel especially good in, or an area that you feel especially not so good in, right? It's just getting better at. It is quite literally the practice, putting in the repetitions to get better at noticing context and variability. Now, these tools in and of themselves also have a lot of benefit, right? Done as a triage, done as a one-off, they can interrupt a stress cycle, right? And I'm not saying all stress cycles, but a fair majority of them. Done over time, repetition, and by over time, I mean weeks, months, years, they help to build up fortitude and resilience, the ability to not be affected by the world around you as much, and or the ability to hold capacity, deal with more, right? Might be physical pain, might be emotional pain, might be bad relationships, it might be things you can't change in the world. And it's like taking your little nervous system bucket and making it bigger, right? So there's a lot in these practices. It's a way to practice mindfulness, it's a way to re-regulate in certain moments, and it's a way to build up fortitude and resilience over time. Now, again, these are not magical miracle cures. It's not going to cure everything, but a vast majority of nervous system glitches, right? Nervous system things that you would prefer not to have, right? So in context of the holidays, this might mean like having too much on your plate, having to be around that person or those people, having to go to that work party maybe you don't want to go to, or deal with the crowds when you're shopping or going shopping in general, whatever it is, right? These might be practices to have readily available for contexts and moments that you would prefer not to be in, right? And kind of as a support mechanism. So here's what it might look like. Toolkit, 5 buckets. First one, breath work. The breath work we're going to practice today is physiological sigh. Covered it a billion times, but we can cover it again. Physiological sigh is a double inhale followed by a single exaggerated exhalation. Inhale, second inhale, long exaggerated exhale. First inhale is generally a big inhale. Second inhale is like to full capacity, long exaggerated exhalation. If you can go in through the nose, all out through the mouth, all the better. But do what works for you. So I'm going to do it once. Together, we're going to do it 3 times. It will look and sound a lot like this. 3 times together. Two more. One more. Now, doing that practice has changed context. Something has shifted in your body, in the space, in what you're doing, right? You're no longer just sitting there. You dropped something new in the bucket. So now look for variability. Did something change in the way you're breathing now, in your heart, in your muscle tension? Good areas, not good areas, however you want to notice, whatever version of mindfulness you're practicing right now. Just notice. And if you're like, I like the way that that shifted me, maybe that's something you need to practice more. Maybe it's something you remember. Maybe it's something you do before bed or when you wake up in the morning or at stoplights or walking down that specific hallway. There's like a trigger that reminds you to practice that thing. And if you didn't like the way that that shifted you, maybe you don't need to do that thing, right? Because luckily there are 4 more categories. Next category is orientation or sensory foraging. Now, we typically do this a lot through visual, right? Which is simply looking around your room and intaking the space. But I want to practice something a little bit different and a little more accessible no matter where you're at, anytime, anywhere. Not that you can't look around, but imagine you are sitting across the dinner table and you're having a conversation with someone at a party, at a meeting, at a gathering that you would rather not be having, right? And you feel yourself get triggered, right? It would be a little weird to start looking around the space, although you could. Sensory foraging can be done through any of the senses. I want us to do it kinesthetically today. What does that mean? Well, sit back in your chair. Notice your feet. Are they touching the floor? Or could they touch the floor? Could the floor touch your feet? Meaning put a pillow, put something underneath them so you feel supported. Notice how the back of your chair touches your back. Where on your back does it touch? Notice your arms, how they are on the chair. Notice how the seat of the chair supports you. Eyes open or eyes closed, your choice. Notice the clothing on your body, the weight of it, the comfort of it, how it touches your body, like the actual fabric. Notice the temperature in the room without having to look. Just kind of notice what temperature does it more or less feel? Is there any breeze coming through? Is sunlight warming anything on you? And could you allow yourself to feel a little more sunk in and supported by the chair in your space? Almost like you don't have to hold yourself up anymore. You're allowing the chair to do a little more work. Think about, take yourself to a time where you might need some more support, right? You're in that heated argument. You are in that conversation you'd rather not be in. You are in the presence of someone who feels threatening somehow, or you're just noticing that you're dysregulated. It might be too much noise, too much light. And could you allow yourself, how might you practice feeling supported by the environment itself, the chair, your clothes, the temperature, the elements in the room? So, breath work, sensory foraging. Notice, how did that make your heart feel, your breath feel, your physical body feel? And which one did you like better? And you probably want to practice one or both of those. The next category is therapeutic touch. So everyone bring your hands together to get them warmed. Options might include cheeks or jaw, throat, chest, belly, or might be like a little hand stroking. This is technically called havening. Havening is a very like methodized version of touch, and it's simply soft, gentle strokes on hands, upper arm, or face. And how easy would it be to sit across the table, the boardroom, whatever, and have a conversation? And right now, I'm havening. You're not even noticing, right? Or you're on that virtual meeting, right? And you just feel like, oh, my nervous system feels a little dysregulated. And right now I'm just doing like a little bit of a gentle stroke on my hands. How easy is that to equip yourself with, right? And then notice, how does that affect your nervous system? And are you a breathwork person, a sensory foraging person, or a therapeutic touch person? Next category is going to be movement. And again, movement can be big. It can be exercises, going for walks, dancing, trampolines, jumping, vibrating, whatever it is, right? It could also be subtle. Subtle movement, the one that we've been practicing a lot is bilateral sways, right and left. And again, I love this one in particular. If you're standing in line at like a busy grocery store or standing like out and about somewhere, right? So easy to kind of stand there and do a little gentle rocking, which is a resource for your body. Your body does the bilateral sway right and left when you feel regulated. So by practicing rocking right and left, it convinces, so a lot of these practices do, convinces your body that you're more or less okay. It's like it interrupts that stress reflex a bit. But I want to give us a different one today. Fidgeting. Fidgeting, shaking, vibrating, super, super easy and very powerful for the system, right? So I'm going to just have, you know what? I'm not even going to show you because we all know what this is. I have my foot, I have my left leg kind of crisscrossed over my right leg right now, right? And I'm letting my foot and ankle kind of, get a little jittery. It's like an anxious foot thing. It's like vibrating. It's the thing that maybe your mom or your dad or your grandma told you not to do, right? Don't do that anxious thing. At least that was what my mom used to tell me. And nothing made me happier than years later as an adult when I discovered that actual like jittery, shaking, restless leg, nervous foot stuff is actually one of the best ways for your body to like dispel stress. Also, micro movements like jittery feet, restless legs, like little shimmer, shaky things are one of the best ways to also lose fat in the body, right? More so than even like bigger movements, right? You'd have to do a lot of shaking, a lot of tremoring to lose a big amount of weight. But I mean, around the holidays, who doesn't want to drop a few pounds or, like such a common thing. I'm not advocating for that, but if that's part of what gets you to do the thing, if that's the motivator, wonderful. I'm more interested in the fact that it actually helps to process, helps us to re-regulate the nervous system. So little shakes, little sways, and then just notice, how did that affect your nervous system? What that really does is kind of plays out the fight or flight response in the body. Instead of staying still, it's a way for your body to feel as if it had the opportunity to run away or fight something. Now, the last one on our category is vocalizations. Vocalizations can be a lot of things. It could be screaming, could be yelling, it could be laughing, could be singing. So if you're really feeling stressed, if you're really feeling disrupted, take yourself into your bedroom, put a pillow over your face, and scream. Go out to your car at lunchtime at work or at that holiday gathering. Go outside in your car and scream. On your way to the holiday gathering, on your way to work, on your way to whatever it is, put on your favorite music and sing. Sing as loud as you can sing and just sing, right? Singing has a lot of breath work involved and a lot of nervous system regulation stuff involved. For the sake of class, we're not even going to ask anyone to sing. We're going to do like the simplistic version of this, which is a sigh. Not a physiological sigh, it's not a breath work. It's quite literally making the sound of a sigh. Hmm. As I'm doing this, I feel a yawn coming on, which is a really good indicator that my nervous system is re-regulating somehow. So just noticing those things and discerning, how does your nervous system like to be supported, and doing more of that, right? But it requires mindfulness. It requires you to pay attention to context and variability, to notice, when am I dysregulated? And as I choose to do these practices, does it actually re-regulate me? Is this the thing that I need to be doing? Or is it not? Then we moved on, the last time we met, onto the topic of compassion. And compassion, as we're defining it, is empathy plus action. The ability to care and notice, is there something going on with me, or is there something going on with you? And then taking action to want to shift or change or be of support to you or to yourself, right? Empathy plus action. And we looked at it in a lot of different ways. But for our revisit today, I want to introduce something new. And this comes from a theory of study, a body of work called psychological fitness. And it's one of my favorite practices because often when we're practicing or at least new at mindfulness, we kind of get stuck at like the first step of something, right? And here's what that might sound like, right? I'm practicing mindfulness for a couple of weeks, and then I go to a holiday party, and I notice that that person, I'm triggered by that person, right? I feel my heart doesn't feel right. My emotions don't feel right. I have negative thoughts. And I immediately go, well, it's that person. That person is causing me to feel this way. It's that person's fault, right? And let's really look at it from a self-compassion standpoint, which kind of translates over to compassion for other people. Now, when I'm telling you this, this is not an advocacy to be around toxic, bad people for you. In fact, quite the opposite. When we talk about compassion, explicitly talked about boundaries and not putting yourself in those scenarios. But let's talk about it when there's maybe some less stuff, right? So not someone who's at a level 10 trigger for you, but maybe like a level 2 or a 3 trigger for you. And here's what psychological fitness would have us do. Let's walk into that imaginary party. I've got to be able to notice my nervous system state. What am I above or below the line? Meaning, am I being pro-social? Am I happy? Am I engaged? Do I feel good in my body? Or am I disengaged, unhappy, not feeling well? Above or below? I walk in and I go, oh, there's Susan. Susan's always a problem, right? And then Susan says something or acts a certain way, and I notice that I get triggered by that. And I say, initially, I notice that Susan is triggering me today. And maybe in that moment, I have the mindfulness to go, oh, look at me in my pattern. I'm blaming Susan, imaginary Susan, for whatever it is. And instead, I'm now going to have an internal dialogue and I'm going to go, oh, look at that. I just said Susan triggered me. Instead, I'm going to switch the language in my head and go, I am triggered. I feel triggered right now. I feel upset. I feel not happy. I feel bad. The next step might be, after a few seconds of that, is to notice, oh, I notice that I feel. Look at that. I have the capacity to notice that I feel something. Look at that. I have the capacity to notice. I have the capacity to notice. I am able to notice. And so we're kind of regressing, right? Susan's a problem. Susan's triggering me. I feel triggered. I notice that I feel. I am aware. I have the capacity to notice. Now, this is not easy. Talking about it in a very abbreviated term, but see what from that you could play with. And it kind of takes the onus or the need to get it right out of Susan and out of you, right? It creates capacity for human nature and human kindness to be present in myself, in Susan, in between us. And it kind of just deflates some of that energy that we often have around people that we'd rather not be around. So I'm just going to leave that there. That might be a version of compassion on top of everything we covered a few weeks ago. That would be really self-serving and also relationally serving to you, to other people, for the environment. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and let's go into gratitude. Gratitude has so Gratitude is a trending hashtag, right? And it feels that way for the last few years, and rightfully so. Gratitude is really the ability to be aware of thankfulness, thankfulness for receiving and thankfulness for giving. Gratitude isn't just about like me getting or you getting things. And it's also not about just you giving things. It's about that reciprocal nature that giving has and the ability to have a lens of thankfulness around it. And there's a lot of benefits to gratitude. Gratitude is one of the best ways to have positive psychological thoughts. It's one of our biggest mechanisms for releasing in your body both dopamine and serotonin at the same time. Dopamine alone, don't really want that, right? Like dopamine, it's not that it's bad, but that's what we get a lot just like looking at the computer or rabbit holing down YouTube or Instagram, right? Serotonin on its own is like really feel good, but doesn't have like that lasting imprint. Dopamine and serotonin coupled together has a lasting effect on the body. So it's a really good way to re-regulate yourself, right? It's got a lot of neuroscience behind it. It also helps us with awake and sleep patterns. It helps with our immune system. It helps with so many physical benefits and psychological benefits. Now, here are, and I've got some notes here just so that I stay on topic for the last few moments here. How do we how do we practice gratitude, right? Number one is how we respond. How do we respond to people giving, right? Whether that's a gift, whether that's a compliment, whether that's support in some way. A recent research study showed that you get benefits and I get benefits, whether we're the giver or the receiver of something, when we respond to favor, someone doing something or giving us something in a very specific way. When you are given something, whether it's a gift, whether it's someone doing something nice for you, if you respond by explaining, you respond by sharing how that thing impacts you, makes your life, your day better, everyone gets more reward versus saying, how nice, how kind that person is for doing something, or wow, that must have cost you a lot, or um, to really focus in on the benefits to you personally. Thank you for doing that. That really helped me. Or I use that thing in this way. Creates that dopamine serotonin release in the body and creates more pro-social behavior. We bond with each other. If we just go, oh, that was so kind of you, that doesn't happen in the same way. We don't get the same benefits. Or even more, when we receive specifically a gift and we go, oh, that's so generous of you. I can't believe that gift giving cycle is disrupted. So especially around gift giving season, right? To just be thinking about when someone does or gives you something nice, accept with generosity. Thank you so much. And really think about and explain in the moment or later how that thing has benefited or supported you. To appreciate yourself, right? To really look in the mirror, like think of a word that you would like to think of yourself as: beautiful, kind, funny, generous, loyal, whatever it is. Like the best thing that someone could say, look in the mirror, especially before you go to that party or that get together, and say that about yourself. See if you can make eye contact for just a moment and say, James, you're generous. I'm so grateful for how generous you are, right? It's one of those things that's super simple and way harder to do than what you're thinking. Keeping a gratitude journal. What are things you're grateful for? What brings you joy? And even if you have challenges, right? What lessons are you learning from those challenges? And then to kind of harken back to that first thing about how we respond to generosity, to have gratitude visits. And what does that mean? We don't say thank you enough to people. And so here's the challenge for this season. Think of someone who you are really grateful for and be ultra specific. Why are you grateful for that? What do they bring to your life? How does that support and enrich you and your life? And then go and tell that person and be as specific and generous with that gratitude as you can be. Because again, that dopamine serotonin release, that immune system building, that positive psychology isn't just about receiving, it's also about giving. And if we do it in that way that's sort of reciprocal, we get it no matter if we're the giver or the receiver. So take with you from this class the one or two things that are making sense, practice those things, and we're going to wrap all of this up next week when we talk about rest and joy. And that's how we're going to wrap this up: rest and joy. So thank you so much. If we have any questions, go ahead and drop them in. I'll answer what I can answer. And if not, I'll see y'all next week. We have a comment in here. I find myself swaying when standing in line or a crowd and just thought, yeah, yep, didn't realize it was my whole body trying to comfort myself. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, you can call it a gratitude appointment or a gratitude visit. It's just to get really, like, if we're talking what we're talking about here, and again, maybe we'll have a whole class on this in the future, or a whole topic day on habit building. But when we're talking about habits, and that's what we're trying to do here, is instead of having it being a one-off, is like, how do I get in the habit? How do I change my behavior to have more compassion, gratitude, and be able to adjust to change in the world better? Is to get specific. And sometimes if we call it something specific, if I make a date, calendar date, put it on there, I get better at actually doing the thing. It's really about, like, with habit building, there's like a whole bunch of things, a reward in there. And here the reward is going to be a dopamine serotonin release. But before the reward, I need spatial temporal specificity. When is it going to happen? Where am I? And who am I with when it's going to happen? And when I start planning that out and then do the thing and I get a reward, that's what builds habits. So could be an appointment, could be a visit, but just get real specific on whatever that is. Let's see. What is someone is comforting? So many questions today. I love it. Let's see. What if someone is comforting you to have a gratitude around? What if someone is comforting you, how to have gratitude around that person? I don't know that I'm quite understanding that. Yolanda, if we can clarify that a little bit. What if someone is comforting you, how to have gratitude?
Confronting you. I think they're saying if somebody is
Oh,
confronting you.
confronting you. Got it. Sorry. Reading the wrong word there. What if someone is confronting you, how to have gratitude around that person? I don't know that you necessarily need to have gratitude around everything, right? And so if it's, a confrontational person, again, if we're talking compassion, just not being around that person, right? Compassion is really the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously, right? Like that's the boundary portion of compassion, the distance in which I can respect and love you and me simultaneously. And sometimes that's just not being around that person. Again, that's a complex question that I don't know I'm going to be able to answer it specifically enough for you here. I'll think about it. Great session. Can we get a recording of this? Thanks for answering that, Alicia. A confronting sibling, for example. Yep. So, Yolanda, just because we're blood relatives with someone doesn't mean we need to put ourselves in confrontational scenarios all the time. If it's somewhere you have to be, it's about equipping yourself before, during, and after. So it's about building up that fortitude and that resilience. So that's where some of those somatic practices might come into play. It might be compassion in that moment, might be an internal compassion going, look at me, look at all of the really great work and gratitude to that extent. Look at all the really great work I've done to be able to be here with that confrontational sibling. Or looking at things that maybe you do enjoy, seeing if you can joy spot things that are joyful about that person. I don't know the person. Maybe they are truly just confrontational, true and through, or maybe they're confrontational moments and quite lovely in other moments, and just kind of noticing that, which is again a mindfulness practice. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Really great to see all of you, and we will continue and kind of wrap up this conversation next week. Remember, on Wednesdays, we have our midweek desk stretch. Our last one is next Wednesday. And then we'll wrap up this program at the end of next week, next Friday. And then we'll all have a lovely holiday and start it all over again in the new year. Thank you, everybody. Bye, Alicia. Bye, Raymond. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, James. Thanks, everyone.